Hello, everyone. My name is Gina Daniel, and I'm going to be your instructor today for the IT automation training class. What we're going to cover today is software installation. And what we're going to do is install XAMPP application as well as Notepad++. Okay. Our objective today is to install the software we need to write and test scripts and create a web page using HTML and CSS. What we're going to do is a pre-install requirements. We're going to review that. We're going to perform the software installation, and we're going to do a post-installation setup, and we're going to create and test a web page. Now, the requirements are pretty basic. For the XAMPP, your current system that you're using is most likely meets all of the requirements for this. This is the size that's pretty much needed for the XAMPP install. So if you're working on a PC where you don't have any storage, then you want to grab an external drive if you have one of those available. Otherwise, you won't be able to do the install. Same applies for the Notepad++. You just want to make sure that you're using one of these systems listed and that you have the available space on your system. Okay, what we're going to start with is the XAMPP package, and you can find that on the ApacheFriends.org website. And this package includes MySQL database server, PHP server, Apache server, web server, and FileZilla. Those are the things that we're going to use throughout the class. After that, then we're going to install the Notepad++, which is a text editor. And that is where we're going to do most of our work, is on the text editor. So we can manipulate the scripts, change it to what we want, and execute it in the browser. Okay, so you can copy and paste this if you like. Well, not from here, but if you have a PDF copy, which is on the website, onwardforms.org/handouts, you'll get a link to this slideshow. All right, so what we want to do is open our web browser, and we're going to put in XAMPP download, or you can put in the actual link to the Apache Friends download. Either way, it'll take you to the same place. Okay, so what we want to download is the latest version of XAMPP, and that's 32-bit package. So what we're downloading right now is the package for Windows. If you have Mac, or if you have using a Linux system, then you can download the latest version for those. So let's check our downloads. Okay. Now, we also want to install the Notepad++. So from your browser, You can just type in Notepad++, and it'll come up. All right, so we want to go to the home for that. Okay, so once you get to the notepad++.org webpage, you want to click on Download. And select the green download button. And it's downloading. Okay, so we can go ahead and click on this to install it. And we want to install the English version. Okay, so this setup is going to guide us through it. All of our settings are going to be on default settings, so we don't need to make any changes. You want to agree to the licensing for this product. Now here is where you would change your drive letter. If you have an external drive or another drive other than C that you'd like to use, this is where you would make that change, or you can browse to the drives where you want to put the install. We're using C, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. We don't need to change anything. The default settings is fine. Just leave it as is and click Next. You may want to have a shortcut added to the desktop. So go ahead and select that and then install. And this package is a lot smaller than the XAMPP, so the finish is going to be pretty quick. Okay, so click Finish. Okay, and we're done with that install. And this just gives you a list of changes and notes from this from the version, from your install version. You can go ahead and close this note, and we can minimize this. We need to do the install for XAMPP. Again, you go to the Apache Friends to download the latest version for Windows, the 32-bit, which we've already done, and our download is complete. So all we would need to do is perform the install. So go to the file that was downloaded, and we want to click on the installer for XAMPP. Now this takes a little bit of time to install. So, now, as this note mentions, the UAC message, that's the informational message, which is your user access control. So you normally get a message for that, and it's just a warning letting you know that this application is trying to install on your system. Okay. All right, so we can just click OK to this and continue with the install. Okay, so you got your welcome message. to the setup wizard. Just click next. All right, so we don't need all of these packages. We really only need the Apache server, MySQL server. You can keep the FileZilla because we may need that to transfer files. We're going to be using the PHP server-side programming, as well as the PHP MyAdmin, which is a GUI interface that we're going to use to manipulate the MySQL database. So we can deselect the fake send mail. We don't need that. The Webalizer, we're not using that. We're not using Perl for this class. If you wanted to keep it anyway, to play around with it, it's up to you. But it's not something we're using. We're not using Tomcat or Mercury. Right, so these are pretty much the only packages that you need to install. You want to ensure that you don't deselect by accident any of these packages because we're going to be using all of these. So let's click next. Again, we're going to install this on the C drive, and if you have a separate drive or external drive that you would prefer to use, go ahead and type in that drive letter before you click next and install, because where it is listed here in this box is where it's going to be installed. So let's click next. All right, so this is just a message asking if you want to get more information about the Bitnami applications. We're not really working with that right now, so I'm going to deselect that so the extra window doesn't pop up. Okay. All right, so now we're all set up, and we can go ahead and start installing. All right. And it takes a bit of time for this to install, not too long, but, you know, a little bit of time. And this Apache also has a dashboard link to the Bitnami applications as a part of this package, and it's just a bundle of free applications that you can use, different types of applications. If you want to build a blog, or if you want to do different types of things, you can go to those applications and install them anytime you want to play around with those. So, once this install finishes, then we're going to work on starting the services that we're using right now. The only service we really are going to use today is going to be the Apache server, and that's because the web page that we're going to create, we need that to we need it to communicate with the browser, and so the web page will have visibility. Also, we want to update the time zone for the PHP file so that when we are ready to use it, we want to make sure that the timing is correct on any commands that we use for anything dealing with time. Okay. Now, there's multiple types of text editors, such as Sublime or other types of text editors that you can use. You don't have to use Notepad++. It's just something that I use all the time, and I just prefer to use it. But the others work just as well, or they may have some other functions. And this text editor actually has some pretty good functions in here where you can indent if you need to, reduce the indent, run to your select browser when we create our web page. If you want to just run it from here in the in your select browser, you can do that. And what I really like about Notepad++ is it's actively saving your information as you type it in. It's not like Notepad. Notepad doesn't save anything. If you close the application, you have to save. Otherwise, you lose all of your information. Well, Notepad++ is different because it saves your information. Even if you close the application, you can go back to the same information that you had. Now, if you close the page within this application, then of course you have to save it, and it'll give you a prompt to save it. Now, during that time, if you don't save it, then you could lose your information. But for the most part, if you open a file in here, your information is saved even when you close the application. And it's always better to be on the safe side and just save your work, save your files so that you'll know that it's there when you go back to use it. Now, we're also going to look at some of the PHP information from the dashboard of the local host. Now, the PC that you're on is considered your local host because the servers that you're installing is on the PC that you're accessing. This is your local host. So when you want to get to your files in the browser, you always start with the local host. Now, what we're going to do as soon as the install finishes is we're going to, once we get the services started, and I want to show you guys what that looks like when the services are started. Once we do that, then we're not going to configure the PHP My Admin Database Server logins right now. We are going to do that later when we go over the MySQL commands. Then we'll work on the logins. But for right now, I want you to be able to just click on your, to go into PHP My Admin and see the database, see what it looks like, what the GUI interface options are, to be able to query information and view your database from that interface. And later on, we'll worry about changing the logins. Okay, so we can go ahead and close this. We don't need this page anymore. Let's see. Okay. Now, we are going to do our create a test page. And this test page is going to include HTML and CSS. And HTML is the hypertext markup language, and it uses tags. And what this is the hypertext has a web page with different types of links and that you can click on to get to other information. Now, we need Apache Server to interpret the type of file that we're using, so it can communicate that with the HTTP protocol that the web browser is using. Now, our file has to be interpreted before it can be processed and we'll be able to see information on it. And we want to be able to see the outputs for the different changes that we make from our files in the text editor. And I'm going to show you some of the things to look out for to make sure that you have your services running and to know what to look for if you get certain errors in the browser. Now, we're also going to use the cascading style sheet, and that gives your elements, your tags in your HTML file style definitions. And that could be properties from the color, the font size, and things like that. You can use cascading style sheet code to manipulate that. And I'll show you how that works. Okay, looks like this is almost done. And I'm also going to show you where to put your hypertext documents so that they'll be visible online. Okay. Now, we're going to, the setup is finished on the PC, so what we're going to do is we're going to keep this selection because we do want the control panel to open up because that's where we're going to go to start the services. Okay, we want to save this in English. All right, so this is the control panel for XAMPP. And this is where you'd go to start the services for your web server and for your database server. We're not using the database server today, but I'm going to go ahead and start these services so you can see what services you'll need to start. Okay, so if you look over here where the modules are listed, they're highlighted in green. That lets you know that the service is on and that the service is running. So let me put this down. All right, so what we want to do now that we started the service is we want to check the configuration file for the PHP, because we're going to change the time, update the time zone to put the correct time zone. And the time zone is going to be different depending on where you are. Where your local host or your PC, where you have this installed, where it is where you need to change the time zone to. So if you're over on the West Coast, then you need to add the time zone for that. I'm over in the East, so I'm adding the time zone for East. So let's type in the local host. All right, and that should take us to our dashboard. All right, so where we want to go is the PHP info page. And we're going to check some of the configurations that we have in here. What I'm mainly looking for right now is the time zone. Okay, it shows here where our XAMPP is rooted in that for Apache in that in C drive where we installed it. So that's working good. So we can do Control F and put in time zone. Okay. Okay, right now the default time zone is set to Europe, Berlin, and we're not in Europe or Berlin, so we need to update that to where we are. So we're going to go to Control Panel again and go to Config for Apache and click on that. And what we want to open is the php.ini file. You can do a Control F to locate the time zone setting. So just put in date. Okay, so there's multiple time zone settings in here, but the ones that aren't being used are the ones that are commented out with this semicolon. The PHP isn't reading that because it's commented out. So you want to look for the one that isn't commented out, that's being read. All right, so this is the date setting, and you can see the label above date to let you know that. This is what's being read by PHP. So we want to remove this and put in the region where we are. And on Eastern, so I'm putting the Eastern time zone setting. Okay, and you want to save this, right? And go ahead and close it. Now, when you make a change, a configuration change to PHP, you have to restart Apache server. So we're going to stop the service for Apache and then restart it. Okay, so let's go back to the browser and check our configuration. All right, so if you look down here, it shows the U.S. Eastern, the time zone change. So we know that's working right. Okay, so we're done with this page and we can close this out. All right, so what we've done is we started our services. We're not doing the configuration for the logins just yet, but we did change the time zone for our php.ini file. We did check some of the PHP settings with the localhost dashboard phpinfo.php file. Okay. And I've already gone over these elements here. Okay, so another thing I need to go over is the htdocs, and that's the hypertext document. This is a public directory for your web pages. You have to have them in this directory in order for Apache to read them. And let me show you how to get to that. Okay, we want to go to our file manager, and we're going to go to the C drive because that's where Apache, that's where XAMPP is installed. So we want to go to the XAMPP folder, And then we're going to go to HT Docs. So we're going to open that. Now, the information that we put in here is what will be read by Apache, and we'll be able to see it when we go to the browser and type in localhost in the file or the folder or wherever we put it in the public area. So I already have a folder. Feel free to create a folder, and you want to call it, you can use your first name or last name, or you can call it test or whatever you want. But you want to create a folder to put all of your files in. You don't want to put a bunch of files here because you don't want to accidentally copy over your index.php file, and that's for your dashboard, your local host dashboard for your XAMPP install. So I'm going to go to where my file is. Okay, let me open another file manager. And let me minimize this and move it over here. I want to just go to this PC and go to my C drive. And okay, so I already created a Daniel folder, which is my last name. So, and it already has my files in there. So I'm just going to drag and drop this in here and just move it there. And I'm just going to close this window. No, I don't need that anymore. Okay, so that's what you do here. You do a right click and go to New and create and click on Folder to create your folder, and you can name it whatever you want. And this is where you'd have your files. Okay. So I can close this. All right, so what we're going to do, okay, so we created our directory for HT Docs. What we're going to do now is create a test page. So we need to go back to the text editor. So what we're going to do is start putting in some HTML code. So let's put in HTML, and let's use HTML5. So, and you type that in by saying, putting in your exclamation mark and dot type space HTML. And we need a closing tag, that's the opening. And a closing tag always has a /. So we want to close this with HTML, right? And let's create a header tag. Okay. Let's do H1 and /H1. Now we want to let's create a style tag, because this is what the and we need a closing for it. Your CSS code is going to go in here. So let's add another header tag for CSS, because you want to put your CSS in the header. Okay, so let's shift this over so we can add some standards to it. All right, so what we want to do for the CSS, and this is going to be for a note that we put in the body. It's going to affect what's in the body. Okay, so let's go ahead and add the body tag here. So we want an opening tag and a closing tag. And the text or elements inside the body needs to be in between the open and closing tags. And we're going to add just a few words. So we're going to use a span. And this is a test. And we're just going to add some text. And we're going to close the span. All right. Okay. And we're going to put some CSS code in here. Let's set it for just the general span. And we want to change the color. Let's make the color blue. And we want to do a background color. Background color, let's make it pink. Okay, so what we want to do at this point is we have to save our file. So we have to go to C drive and XAMPP, htdocs, and then we want to go to the folder that we created. And we're going to type in, let's do test 2, because I have a lot of test files in there. All right, so this is an HTML file, so we have to look for HTML file extension and hypertext markup language file. That's what we're using. And this HTML is the file extension. And you know it's the file extension because it's behind the dot. You have the file name, dot, and then the file extension. So make sure that down here when you're saving that it says HTML, as long as your intent is to save an HTML document. So let's click Save. Now notice the color change when you save the file. The text editor or Notepad++ is color coding different types of files based on what they are and what the commands do or the code does. So let's put this, add hello world to this header up here. Okay, so let's save that change. Now we want to go to the local host / the folder where we saved our file, and then the file name, test2.html. Okay, so here is our header, hello world, and the text that we put in. This is a test and the background color. Now this is the CSS, definitions that we added to this, and you can change it. You can go back to your text editor and you can change the font size if you like. You can change it to 12 point or 16. and you want to save that, but you have to save it and then you have to refresh in order for your browser to populate the change. Okay. All right. So so what we did was we wrote a test page. We created a web page with HTML and CSS, and we tested that out. We used the browser to view the output of what we created from our test page. And let me just work on show you something else. You know, if your browser isn't able to find a page, say your Apache isn't on, for some reason you turned it off and forgot, and you go back to your browser to run a test, and you get a message saying, oh, we can't find or reach that file. So you want to go to your control panel and ensure that Apache service is running, so your browser can identify the page you're trying to get to and interpret it and run it. Okay. Now what we want to do is kind of review what's coming up for the next week. What you're going to do for your homework is create a web page, and you're going to use input tags to create a form. You can use CSS if you like, but it has to be an HTML form. Be sure to document your experiences during the development of this form, and that's so that you'll have questions during the next class. Now, let me go to the web. Okay, so if you go to onwardform.org/handout, you'll see a documents page. And this page is where resources will be put. So if you can view the cheat sheets. And this cheat sheet gives you a list of HTML tags, all of the codes that you're going to need to create your form. Everything's in here that you'll need. If you look here at the top on page 2, it says forms. Now, these codes are what you would use to create a form. You definitely have to have a form tag. You can use a select multiple. That's optional. The text area, you can use that. And these different types of inputs, once you play around with it, you'll see how they work. Also, a copy of this PowerPoint is here in PDF form. You can just click on that and go through the slides if you like. A site that will definitely help you with creating your form is W3 Schools. Yeah, W3 School. There's a lot of information in here for HTML. Let's see. They have form examples and form elements and different things like that. So if you wanted to practice their forms, you could. But you're definitely going to need to create your own. You can do the try here and look at their source code to see how they did their form. But you're going to need to create a form and document well, documenting isn't necessary, but it's really just for you to ask questions for the next class. So that's it for the homework. Here's my contact information if you need to contact me, or the main support email is here. You can call us anytime or go to the website to submit for questions if you have questions there. And I want to thank you for taking this class.